it sounds a little cliche to say it was tense, but it was tense. Everybody was going nuts, generally speaking, and there was a lot of emotion, and there was a lot of, I guess, local angles to it that nobody saw coming, which sort of, I think that increased the amplitude of the tension around here a little bit. There's one interesting thing that happened maybe 2 or 3 days after 9/11. There was a Boston Globe story. It was just a daily story, and it popped, and maybe 20 paragraphs into it, it had this passing reference to the fact that, and nobody had known this before, that at the first World Trade Center bombing trial of the first set of bombers, there was a receipt introduced as evidence at trial from a Radio Shack in Columbia, Missouri. And so, of course, that sort of got all the newsroom staff energized about what the heck. So everybody started looking into that thing. I don't think anybody ever found much of it, but it was pretty exciting because it kind of put a local angle on what was a faraway looking story. Then there was kind of the local unfortunate stuff that happened. The guy that owns the Coffee Zone, Osama, unfortunately named Osama, had a coffee shop, which is now, what the heck is it? Oh, it's now Noodles and Company over on 9th. And somebody painted on his windows, and there was a couple of acts of violence, or vandalism, I guess, directed at him, which was, completely unfortunate. They had to put police surveillance at the mosque for a couple of days. I mean, it was just, and you probably would hear the same stories everywhere, but it was just nutty to see it play out in, Columbia, Missouri, of all the places in the world. I guess you have these layered emotions. I was taking my daughter to preschool for her first day of preschool over at Southwest Play School on Broadway, right across from Gerb's there at the Unitarian Church, and I'll never forget. Was pretty oblivious actually to everything until I got there, because I think she had to be there at about the time the first plane hit. And I remember pulling into the parking lot, and somebody I knew there said, "Have you heard anything?" And I hadn't heard a thing. And the news was sort of slowly delivered to us sitting on the playground at Southwest Play School with a bunch of beautiful little 4-year-olds who were, wanting us to push them on the swing. So that was very surreal. And as a parent of a 4-year-old, you kind of have to hide that. The fact that you're processing some really terrible news that you have a hard time even digesting, right? And then meanwhile, my daughter's running up every 3 seconds going, "Push me." I was very angry, very outspoken, and it was a tough period to be outspoken. I mean, it really was. Minority viewpoints, dissent was not tolerated very well. Not in Columbia, not anywhere. It was tough. I was Freedom of Information Chair of SPJ for a 4-year period that began in 2001. So it was a poor sense of timing on my part. So I was kind of the spokesperson for SPJ on access issues and secrecy issues for that entire pathological period we found ourselves in. And so I had to speak out. And I was very outspoken. And I can remember being called lots and lots of things, getting hateful email, and it was very commonplace. What's more disturbing about it? It's not disturbing or surprising to me that government continues to take liberties and encroach. What's disturbing about it is the complacency on the part of people. And that's what I find just really troubling, is how willing people are to just wholesale hand over their civil liberties to the federal government without very much outcry at all. With each passing year, though, I think people get a little bit more critical of that, and there's a little more scrutiny paid to the arguments that government makes. And so I hope we'll find equilibrium at some point, but it's in the distant future, that's for sure. For now, if you just look at the airport alone, what we are willing to put up with in the name of convenience is, it's astonishing, really. And it's changed fundamentally. In a way, that's kind of the lens in which you can look at, how America has changed. stand in a TSA line and you'll know.